Group 2, maintaining present course. Group 3, airborne. Group 4, maintaining present course. Group 5, airborne.
All stations, reporting the position of a strategic target.
Hey, how's it going, Captains? Admiral Tori here, and welcome aboard the USS Lexington. Now, in today's video, I just want to talk about an article that has really caught my attention. This article can be found on World of Warships website. It's been out for a couple weeks, and it was an article called Questions and Answers to the Developers of World of Warships for 2017. What did the developers have planned for 2017 that the community asked for them? There were very generic questions like adding a new texture line to the current state of the game, like the battleship category for the Royal Navy, adding some more cruisers, adding more destroyers, all the stuff that you can expect from them, adding more features like communication, improvements to this, that, clans, matchmaking, your basic stuff. But there was one particular question that has really stuck out to me, and this one really hit me hard. The question was, why do you make CV players or aircraft carrier players suffer? Now, several months ago, I made a video expressing my frustration being fed up the way aircraft carriers play in this game. Now, aircraft carriers are evidently broken in the sense of not just balance, they're just broken in general. They don't have a fundamental foundation, if I want to put it that way. They just basically, people's views can be very skewed about aircraft carriers because aircraft carriers are technically the most powerful class of ships in this game. Now, the first half of this gameplay, you're going to see me suffer with aircraft carriers. This is one of the problems with aircraft carriers. Aircraft carriers are getting thrown back and forth because sometimes they're very powerful and sometimes they're not powerful at all. And there's a big battle between aircraft carrier players being very frustrated with the way they play, not just the power of dive bombers or the power of fighters or whatever the case is, but there's not enough mechanics. I have a huge passion for aircraft carriers. I love aircraft carriers as much as I love battleship, historically speaking, and the enjoyment of playing World of Warships with aircraft carriers. I know for a fact that aircraft carriers, they're very clunky the way to play. When you click or select a plane, you cannot see the options because if you do one attack per each planes, then you won't be able to see the other planes. The balances between the American and Japanese carriers, there are just so many problems I can list on and on that I don't want to talk about. And I specifically state in that particular video that there is no way that you can fix aircraft carriers by buffing or nerfing these planes. I play many RTS games. They offer more options other than just click to attack. There's options to flank, there's, wind turbulence that can be added to the game. There's many variables that are absent in this game, and what I've seen so far, I was very disappointed with aircraft carriers, and ever since then, I specifically state that I was just completely fed up with it. Now, that was just only one part of the problem, but yet I was able to endear all the way to tier 9 with the Japanese and the American line, because my passion, my heart for the aircraft carriers, my enjoyment to have something different other than just shooting the 406mm guns on the Iowa or playing the Amagi with her 410mm guns. I wanted a different experience, and aircraft carriers offer that different world. Of course, majority of players, it's pretty evident that majority players have pretty much a disagreement with aircraft carriers. I mean, you got 3 classes of ships: destroyers, cruisers, battleships. They don't have anything that relates to aircraft carriers, and whenever aircraft carriers harasses a player who plays that particular class of ship, it's obvious that they're going to have some inner rage due to the fact that you can't do anything about an aircraft carrier. Even though in this gameplay proves a point. The first half of the gameplay, I feel so helpless because the enemy team has just done the easiest counter to aircraft carriers, making them obsolete for the entire game. And that is to stay grouped, have cruisers, battleships stay together, combine the anti-air power, and basically suppress the sky. This is where aircraft carrier players complain because there's nothing you can control about it. But when players disperse, then the player who's in the battleship, destroyer, cruisers can't do anything about it because they're being singled out by aircraft carriers. They cannot see the aircraft carriers while the aircraft carriers can freely drop their torpedoes or dive bombers onto them. And that is where people get frustrated. And there are many ways you can fix that. For example, one way that is going to be difficult, just judging from what I'm thinking of, is to improve matchmaking. The current matchmaking with aircraft carriers is just, they just send any aircraft carrier in the match, 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 aircraft carriers. They're not very specific. If you play aircraft carriers, you know for a fact that aircraft carriers have different loadout. They have the air superior loadout, and they have the strike loadout. If there was an improvement to matchmaking, if it was always 2-on-2 carriers, for each team that has 2 carriers, one carrier would run the strike loadout, the other carrier will run the air superior loadout. And that kind of evens it out because there's be one carrier who does damage, and the other carriers will be protecting your fleet against the enemy carrier who has the strike loadout. So there's this balance, but that is not implemented in the game at all. Sometimes you get in games where there's just pure air superiority, sometimes it's just pure strike, which pretty much frustrates everyone else who's not playing aircraft carriers because you're basically going to get destroyed by aircraft carrier since the other carrier doesn't have that many fighters to deal with the other strike carrier. And if you've been in a game where there's 2 Lexingtons that both run strike, no fighters at all, you can understand that the sky is just ruled by damage, just pure damage, nothing to counter it. And there's just so many problems. And when I saw this question for the first time, that Wargaming has really answered the hope, because I have never seen any sign of change except changing the economy, changing the XP, changing the loadout, changing the damage. That's all they have done. Like I said, the only way for me personally from what I've seen is that if you want to fix aircraft carriers, you're going to have to rework from the ground up. You want to add more features instead of just, just attacking the ship. Maybe you have some consumables that increases the damage of fighters for a short duration to shoot down planes. Maybe you can increase the speed of the plane for a short duration. Add skills. I'm not saying, you know, there's plenty of ideas to add and to improve. The idea of a battleship having anti-air to shoot down an entire aircraft carrier squadron of planes is just simply stupid. If I want to put it that way, because that's what a lot of Battleship players have. And you know me, I've been playing Battleship for a long time. But, you know, if you were to counter that easy, and some people propose that aircraft carriers shouldn't be in this game, but for Battleship players, I hear Battleship players complain that they need defensive fire to deal with aircraft carriers. So what is the aircraft carriers going to do if their planes just get easily shot down? I mean, the basic idea that Wargaming wanted from the beginning, when they introduced aircraft carrier, was that if you fleet states group, you can easily counter the carrier and make the carrier have a difficult time of dealing with any of these ships. But in reality, it's kind of obvious that everyone wants to do their own thing, and that's understandable. We don't live in the perfect world. And this is where I think that Wargaming kind of misses the idea that we don't live in the perfect world. Some might get the idea, but I think most of the time they haven't realized that until now, because ever since I made that bold statement that I was completely fed up with carriers, because I was one of the few people who play carriers. So whenever I'm in the game, people would complain about the way I play carriers, and I just fed up with the disrespect, fed up with being pushed around, and it got to a point where people actually report me when I play a high tier carrier. For example, the Essex. The Essex was the reason why I was just completely done with playing carriers. And ever since then, it seems to me that aircraft carriers got worse, because right after I was done with that video, Wargaming has nerfed the economy for aircraft carriers, so it's make it difficult to actually make coins on the carrier. And then they also nerfed the base XP. To get 2000 XP on the carrier, you probably have to pull off like 100 to 200,000 damage, possibly like 200,000 to get at least the 2k XP, while on a battleship you can get it with 150,000 damage with several flags captured. It's so difficult to enjoy carriers at this moment. The only reason you would enjoy carriers is for those people who have a really pure heart to play carriers. I've seen people who say that they're inspired to read stories about the USS Saratoga, the Shokaku. Some carriers are not in the game that I wanted to be in game. The Akagi, the Kaga. There are so many things. I really want to hear the Mustangs, the Zeros, the Judys, the Vals, the Nakajimas, torpedoes. I want to hear those whistlings of the dive bombers in the sky. It's just, you can just imagine the sky being lit, because it's been so long. It's been a while since we actually seen our anti-air go off. I always thought that it was very, amazing. Even if I'm the victim of an aircraft carrier when I play battleships, I enjoy seeing my anti-air going off. And I really did like when Wargaming brought back the animation for the original anti-air, because at one point there was barely any anti-air animation, because they took it out for a second due to the fact that some people couldn't run it, or for whatever the case it is. But yes, that is what I dream of. I can just imagine the roar of planes in the sky, the anti-airs going off, shooting at the planes coming down. And it's really hard to bridge the balance between the people who play battleships, destroyers, and cruisers, while the people who play aircraft carriers. Like I said, it's leaning more towards the people who don't play carriers, because there's not many people who actually play carriers, and most of the cases when you die to a carrier, you're more angry about it compared to dying to a battleship, cruiser, and possibly a destroyer. And also I made a prediction that once aircraft carriers become much less present in the game, destroyers will become more dominant. And guess what? Ever since aircraft carriers started to become less relevant due to the several patches, destroyers started to do well, especially the Japanese, in terms of the torpedo run. Now, of course, the Japanese destroyers were reworked because they also were one-trick ponies, but that's a whole another topic. But the point is that ever since the aircraft carriers were out of the game, a lot of people didn't realize, it was a big factor. But destroyers started to become more dominant, and Wargaming had to fix it, because destroyers were getting some complaints due to the fact that battleships, cruisers can't deal with destroyers that drop torpedoes if they can't see them, and then they just get nuked by destroyers. So what did they do? Well, if aircraft carriers are not there to spot for destroyers or spot torpedoes that are coming towards the battleship's way or scout, Wargaming did is that they added more radar, more hydroacoustic search. Look at the German destroyers. They have hydroacoustic search. German battleships, they have hydroacoustic. Russians and American cruisers, they have radar. And I remember I read a patch where they actually increased the radar range and the duration on American radar. They added these consumables to nerf destroyers. And now destroyer players are complaining because now they can't do as much as they want because a lot of these new things that are added to the game can easily counter destroyers' torpedoes and their ability to stay in smoke due to radar. It's because aircraft carriers are absent. People weren't complaining about destroyers back in the day. They were complaining about aircraft carriers because aircraft carriers were there to actually counter the destroyers and also push your team to the correct direction on the map. If you ever notice, a lot of people like to say that why is my team lemon training? Meaning that they stack the entire team on one side and sometimes you lose due to that fact. Well, that wasn't a problem back in the beta days when there were more aircraft carriers. You know why? Because aircraft carriers send their plays down through the middle and spot for their team, and it will actually count on the map. People look at the map, people actually look at the map, count how many ships, and they go to the side where there's most of the enemy ships are going to. Nowadays, you get games where your entire team might lemon train because they don't want to be picked off on the one side due to the fact that you don't know for a fact that there's that many ships on that side. I know that feeling because every time I play battleships, sometimes I end on a side where there's not many ships and I get focus fire to death because I didn't get the knowledge or the intelligence that there was going to be a huge fleet of enemy on that side. There was this absence of a huge element of the game, if I want to put it that way. And that is... So when I saw that Wargaming has finally answered that, I have hope for aircraft carriers, and this is why I'm playing the USS Lexington, because it really brought a smile to my face that I'm feeling that if Wargaming reworks the carriers correctly, not just buff or debuff them or whatever the case is, but fix the mechanics, I'll be very happy. I'm looking forward to doing more aircraft carrier videos in the future. So let's talk about the gameplay to end the video. This is actually an interesting gameplay. I'm going for the torpedo run on the Montana. Now, I kind of like this gameplay because this one proves my point about how aircraft carriers play differently. So my team is on the losing end, but luckily I was able to save my team by sinking the Montana. Now, we do have a Edinburgh, I believe, on my team, who certainly cannot beat a Montana nor the Bismarck, but luckily I was still alive to sink the Montana. Now, we are still kind of, short behind because they still have a battleship and an aircraft carrier. The game is starting to become much more intense at this point because it's like a 2-on-2. But the Edinburgh is actually on the losing end because the Edinburgh is getting harassed by the enemy carrier. One of the problems with having the strike loadout on the Lexington is that I don't have fighters at all. So I can't provide any air coverage for the Edinburgh. So this is a big problem with the Lexington and the American carriers in general until you reach tier 9. But even at tier 9, you only get one set of fighters to deal against 2 fighters on the Taiho. So my Edinburgh is actually trying to make his escape from the Bismarck because he knows for a fact that the Edinburgh will get owned by Bismarck. Bismarck can easily take on the Edinburgh. Edinburgh cannot stop and smoke and hide because the Bismarck, number 1, is fast, number 2, it has hydroacoustic search, and basically the Edinburgh is on the losing end of this battle. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to get my planes back on the deck, trying to assist the Edinburgh and sink the Bismarck. Unfortunately, the Bismarck is actually full health, so this is going to be difficult. The enemy Lexington is running the standard 1-1-1 loadout, meaning that he has 1 fighter, 1 torpedo bomber, and 1 dive bomber. His fighter, if he sends his fighter to the Bismarck, then it's going to be very difficult to actually sink the Bismarck. Now, earlier, I actually strike the Lexington because due to the fact that they first had the game and the entire enemy team grouping up, I kind of got, fed up with the fact that there's no point of striking any of these ships because they're so grouped up. But I knew for a fact that the enemy Lexington is going to be alone because in most cases, aircraft carriers don't go with the fleet. If they go with the entire fleet, they're going to be spotted and they're going to be shot down to death. So I went for the triple dive bomb attack on the enemy Lexington, which put him into a low HP state. And at the same time, while the Lexington was making an escape, in the early parts while I was talking about aircraft carriers, I had one of my dive bombers to spot the Lexington, and I believe one of our battleship, which was the Iowa, was able to score big hits on the Lexington to do more damage. So right here, this is the part I really enjoy about aircraft carriers. I know for a fact that there's no way that I can sink the Bismarck in one run. And you notice that the enemy Lexington Corsairs are actually within the range of the Bismarck. So what I did was that I know for a fact that that Lexington is low. So I'm going to send one of my squadrons of dive bombers into the Lexington direction because last seen was on that part of the map. Now we're on the losing end slightly because the Bismarck is taking B flag. I'm going to send 2 of my dive bombers, making like the majority, making the Lexington think that I'm going to try to kill this Bismarck. But I know for a fact that I cannot kill the Bismarck, but there's another way to secure the kill. So I'm fiercely trying to search for the enemy Lexington in order to secure the victory for sure. So I distracted the enemy one and only fighter while I sent my one lonely sneak attack dive bomber squadron 4 into the Lexington direction, and what do you know, he has low HP. Now the only final thing I gotta do is to hope for RNG to hit the Lexington. Now Lexington has one of the largest flight decks in this game, so it's very easy to score big hits with the Lexington dive bomber against another Lexington flight deck. I find that the Lexington dive bombers have a troublesome time hitting targets that don't have that much of a whiff, like for example cruisers or destroyers, and possibly several tier 7 carriers because the Hiryu has a very thin flight deck in terms of the whiff. So after that, I was able to actually outplay the enemy team because the Lexington didn't realize that one of my dive bombers was missing from that attack, and he should have sent his fighter to protect his ship rather than protect the Bismarck because the Bismarck would have been still a difficult target to sink. But he didn't know for a fact that I didn't have any torpedo bombers due to the fact that I used it in the beginning of the match this entire time. So after that, I was able to secure the win, and my team was actually really celebrating. These are the moments that I really enjoy aircraft carriers. These are the moments where I just completely forget about the flaws with the aircraft carriers, the things that I wish they had better mechanics in. Is pulling these strategies. This is the thing I really want from aircraft carriers. Is adding more strategy. But in the current state of the game, there's not much strategy. The best strategy is right there. Just send one random missing dive bomber to find another carrier. Divert your number of squadrons to do something else, and that's it. I wish there's more skills, like more consumables to this game. Like I said, maybe increase the speed of the planes for a certain duration, increase the armor, increase the the will of the pilot. There's so many ideas that I hope that Wargaming in 2017 will make my wish come true. And I really do want to see those planes in the sky again. Or see the Lexington, see the Essex, see the Shokaku, see the Akagi, see the Taiho. I want to see. And even with this much damage, I still got placed somewhat fairly at the top. But normally you get placed at second place or first place if you pull this type of damage with the Lexington, I believe. I think I got like 100,000 damage, or at least somewhat 100,000, which usually places you at the top before the patch. But nowadays, this is what you get for the carriers. So thanks for watching, and I will see you guys next time on World of Warships.